Climate-induced migration, a global challenge. Extreme weather, like hurricanes, floods, or fires, displaces communities. Crop failures lead to food insecurity and the loss of livelihoods. Resource competition fuels to conflicts, while infrastructure damage makes areas uninhabitable. Climate-induced migration is complex, but vital to address. Together, we can create a sustainable future. Join the effort to combat climate change and protect communities.
The main strategies that Mexico has adopted to deal with climate-induced migrants are: first of all, Mexico has provided humanitarian assistance to migrants, offering shelter, food, and medical support, and also has provided resources and infrastructure to vulnerable communities to reduce migration pressures. Also, Mexico has a national climate change policy focusing on reducing environmental degradation and supporting at-risk communities, and has improvements in disaster preparedness and response. Finally, Mexico actively participates in international climate agreements like the Paris Agreement, and also collaborates with non-governmental and international organizations for shared solutions. In conclusion, Mexico's dedication to addressing climate-induced migration underscores its commitment to protecting communities and adapting to climate change.
Some of the United States strategies in dealing with climate-induced migrants include working towards addressing the core of the issue, which is climate change. The United States has actively been working toward reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. Also, they are providing asylum and humanitarian resources in order to help but keep the situation under control. Proactive policies rather than reactive, because the United States thinks on long-term solutions. They have also created climate resilience programs. The United States has implemented these programs such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration or the Federal Emergency Management Agency. These programs help vulnerable communities adapt to climate change and reduce the need for migration. These programs focus on building resilience to extreme weather events, rising sea levels, increased temperatures, and other climate-related challenges.
Some similarities that are to be mentioned about how Mexico and the US deal with climate change and this migration are as follows. Both countries agree that it is important to address the root of this issue, which is climate change. As mentioned before, the United States and Mexico have implemented measures and agreements to minimize their carbon emissions. An example of this could be the Paris Agreement, in which a goal has been set to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of each country, as well as the implementation of new border control policies that have been set in the recent years as immigration has exponentially increased. Some differences that can be identified are that Mexico has faced a larger strain of its resources compared to the US, meaning that Mexico focuses on internal displacement and regional cooperation, while the US primarily deals with international immigration. We can also notice that the US provides more humanitarian aid and asylum for refugees than Mexico. Even when both countries have climate change adaptation efforts, the US places more emphasis on resilience and reducing the impacts on climate change, while Mexico has prioritized help to migrants and affected countries to adapt.
The issue of climate migration is something that is affecting both Mexico and the United States. So what can these countries do to combat the issue at hand? My first recommendation for both countries would be to look at the root of what is causing this issue, which is climate change. Both countries should set goals for themselves to decrease their emissions footprint by a certain date and make it official so that they are held accountable through something like the Paris Agreement, which they are both part of. My main recommendation for Mexico would be to invest in government programs to help incorporate the migrants into their society so that they do not become displaced and they can contribute to the Mexican economy by having jobs. As far as the U.S., I think that the United States should continue to develop a more sound system for granting these immigrants asylum and humanitarian protections like the temporary protected status, while also focusing on making sure that an exponential strain isn't imposed on the country's resources. I think that by doing this, the U.S. can continue to think long-term with their policies and make sure that these immigrants find a forever home.